I'm not a baby, I'm a man. I am an anchor man. I'm a man who discovered the wheel and built the Eiffel Tower out of metal and brawn. That's what kind of man I am.
Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah, it's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
John Combest, even though I love that jingle, you know the only reason I play it? Do
the initials have to do with Corn Pop?
Yes, Camellia Peterson loves that jingle, so that's the only reason I play it. That is John.
Is that why you call her Corn Pop? Because the initials are CP? I thought it was a Joe Biden thing, but you call her Corn Pop.
I don't call her Corn Pop. I play that on the air as a break, Phil. That whole thing where he goes into the Corn Pop explanation. Have you heard that on the station before?
I have, Brad. That's in between the Ronald Reagan drops.
Right. It's very cringeworthy. Okay, that is John Combest, Combest. You can tell it's a Friday because we have our Monday through Thursday jingle, but on Friday we have the special jingle, which is the Barbershop Boys. Now, also what we do on Friday is we bring in another diverse ethnic group. Nobody can say that we aren't, punching all the buttons and hitting all the different chords. Right, John?
That's absolutely right.
We bring in our Polka Boys.
Time for the John Combest Top 3.
As the aforementioned Polka Boys just said, John Combest does his top 3 on Friday. Every day he does it, but we do it a special version on Friday because the Polka Boys bring it in. Now, what is John Combest's top 3? What does he have a top 3 of? If you ever go to his website, johncombest.com, Combest, you have this extensive list of all these important stories. It's not anything fancy. Matter of fact, some people say it's somewhat basic because it's done in what version of web? John, what version is it?
0.0.
It's done in web version 0.0. And what it is, it's like the Drudge Report from the state of Missouri, the old Drudge Report before it got to be Stinko. And what it does is it gives you all sorts of links to stories, and then you click on them, it takes you to various websites and stuff like that. And you are on one informed SOB. That's all you are. But what we do with the top 3, we bring in this gentleman right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he counts down John's top 3. And we start off with...
In third place...
Oh, great news for drivers in the Westplex. Not yet, but it's coming. I'm not talking about Interstate 70 improvements. No, I'm talking about another project. And this story is brought to us by Ethan Colbert of the Post-Dispatch. Ethan's headline, Highway 61 projects will ease traffic, boost safety in St. Charles County. MoDOT says there's an event coming up, and we're going to get to that in a second. But here's how Ethan starts. State leaders have been working for years on a plan to transform Highway 61 into a 6-lane highway through much of St. Charles County. Now they are ready to make some of those plans public. On Wednesday, mark your calendars, at Wentzville City Hall, MoDOT will host a town hall meeting to present projects, including an overpass and roundabouts, aimed at alleviating traffic congestion, excuse me, I pronounced that incorrectly, traffic congestion along Highway 61. Brad, I'll mention one quote here, and then we can get into it. You know this area much better than I do, and I want your opinion on it. Ethan writes, these projects, city and county leaders hope, will help make the eventual construction of a widened highway a reality in a high growth area. And then the quote from the city administrator of Wentzville, Doug Lee: traffic volume on Highway 61 is already extremely high on a 2-lane road. It has been MoDOT's priority and the city's priority that safety improvements are needed along the corridor. Now, if folks go back and listen to yesterday's show, that was December 18th. If you listen to C Block, you'll hear Brad Hildebrand talk about the Westplex Chamber of Commerce. And Brad, I don't know if you know this, but if you ever picked up the entire Westplex, if you had like a big enough crane and you moved it somewhere, it would be the 47th biggest city in the country, right between Tulsa and Minneapolis. I don't know if you heard that data point before, Brad.
John, I've never heard that.
One of the data points that Ethan brings up here is that the traffic represents continued population growth in St. Charles region. Once a small farming community, Wentzville has grown from fewer than 10,000 residents in 2000 to more than 44,000 in 2020. So that echoes what Brad Hildebrand said in C Block yesterday about the Westplex. Brad, you drive these roads like none other. What do you think about the 61 stuff? What do they need to do?
Well, there's an interesting component of this, which they don't mention. It's they talk about St. Charles County, which is, that area up there, Moscow Mills, Old Monroe, and some of those places are along 79, some of them along 40, 61. I guess it would be 60, 61 or whatever it is. It's when it comes to Highway 40, it technically ends out there at 64. Okay, but the component of that that's missing is Troy. Troy is growing by leaps and bounds, and that's in Lincoln County. My daughter lives up there. She lives off of Highway 47 between 4061 and 79, sort of halfway between those two. And there's a lot of stuff going on in that area. Troy's really getting to be a big area. What's interesting is the Westplex, I guess you could call it still St. Charles County, is still expanding westward all the way out into Forestell, now into Warren County, and especially if you've got areas out there where some of the St. Charles County developers are now building homes in Warren County, but it's also going to the north along 79. If you drive up along 79, there is a bunch of subdivisions right along 79 in St. Paul, which is north of O'Fallon, and especially if along when you go up toward Troy, areas expanding crazy. And that's the whole thing. What do those people do? They come down, from Troy down to pick up 70 and go east on 70, or they continue on 4064 and head into West County, places like that, or in St. Charles County. It's a happening place, John.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And so it sounds good that, MoDOT has focused a lot of attention, as you would expect, on the 70 project. That takes up a lot of their time and mind share, I'm sure. But that's great to see the 61 stuff. And Brad, what else is expanding in the Westplex? A bunch of stuff in story number 2.
Well, John, if I can just make one more comment. The thing that sort of amazes me is, sometimes you hear about these projects. Well, this project's been approved, and then they don't do anything for like 3 years. I have to be honest with you. I'm amazed at the progress they're making along 4064, essentially from K all the way out to the 70 interchange. The 70 interchange has already been graded over. They're already starting, the new overpasses and things like that. And when you go toward Kingdom City on 70, there's a bunch of the area toward Warren County that already has the 6 lanes in, which is going like, man, that went up in a hurry. It wasn't like they drug their feet, and the whole goal of this is 6 lanes across the state of Missouri from St. Louis all the way to Kansas City. And that way, Adam Schnelting can have one more lane. When someone's in that left lane, he can go around in the center lane at 120 miles an hour, so they're not blocking him. So that's a benefit for Adam Schnelting, John.
They've renamed it in 2026. They've called it the Shelley Bar Law.
There you go. Okay,
because they were going to call it the Leadfoot Law, but they just figured they'd do it in homage to Shelley.
Number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Another St. Louis radio station. Probably the best known, maybe the biggest signal. I don't know, Brad. You're an expert on this stuff. Let's not get into the minutia, but it's the Mark Reardon show in the afternoon. I'm, of course, talking about 97.1 FM. And as an aside, Annie Fry had a terrific interview with Catherine Hanaway that you can find on johncombest.com today. But that's not in our top 3. And our top 3 is a follow-up to a story that we've discussed many times on this show. Deedum Tots discussed many times on this show. And that is the rescheduling of cannabis. You and I talk about hemp and cannabinoids and marijuana. And yesterday, President Donald Trump signed an executive order rescheduling marijuana. Now, I heard this, and I had previously heard this, of course, on the Farm Show, right here on Westplex Talk 104.5, Saturdays at 10 a.m. And I had heard marijuana lobbyist Ethan Thampy talk about what rescheduling might mean. But you know what? The details were kind of fuzzy. And I'm glad that Mark Reardon had a gentleman on from the Missouri Cannabis Trade Association. And Mark began by saying, first of all, he's friends with this gentleman, Andrew Mullins. Mark also mentioned that Mark's wife works in the cannabis industry. Mark did kind of a disclaimer before he got into this. Anyway, Mr. Mullins explained what exactly this means. And I'm just going to touch on the transcript real quick here, Brad. So Mr. Mullins says that Mark said, hey, does this have to do with that whole banking thing, or can now bankers touch marijuana money? Here's what Mullins said. No, not necessarily on the banking side. Since marijuana has been listed as a Schedule I substance in 1970 to now, what you've seen the limitations that includes. So when you have marijuana listed as something that has no medical benefit, that federal illegality creates a lot of barriers both in business but also in medical research, and actually having true research that represents the power of the plant and what this medicine can do. So to cut to the chase, Brad, I heard this interview, actually, I had it on when I was driving. And as Mr. Mullins points out, and as Mark Reardon pointed out, there are people who are even critics of marijuana who say that marijuana should not be legalized, that marijuana is not a medicine, who haven't been able to do extensive research to prove their point because marijuana has been a Schedule I drug. And those folks, ironically, seem to support this Trump executive order because they say, hey, now it's going to be easier to do research. And when we do this research, we're going to prove that marijuana is especially bad for young people. And Brad, before we discuss this, I'll just mention, I thought Andrew Mullins brought up a great point, and I think a surprising point, I guess, if you think of the cannabis industry as just trying to push this stuff. Mullins mentioned, hey, in so many words, if there's research out there that shows that cannabis or marijuana has serious medical negative benefits, we want more research. We want to be able to see that data. And I think that the subtle point that Mullins was making was, look, we have plenty of research that shows that this can help people on the medical side. Mr. Mullins even cited examples in his own family. But Mullins was like, we want to know if this has really negative effects. We want to know about it. And Mullins also underscored the fact that if you go into one of these dispensaries, there are serious security features that keep people aged 21 and under out. These products are not intended for people 21 and under. And as we've seen through Missouri legislative fights, MoCannTrade is certainly on the offensive in terms of keeping kids away from these products. So I thought Mullins did a really good job in explaining the MoCannTrade position. And Brad, I'll just plug again. If you want to hear another view of where rescheduling is in terms of the big picture, listen tomorrow at 10 a.m. to the Farm Show here on Westplex Talk 104.5. And I am going to replay a clip from Ethan Thampy from November 1st, in which Ethan does a masterful job talking about what rescheduling means.
John,
Brad, what do you think?
John, you missed the most important aspect of Mr. Mullins' discussion yesterday on Mark Reardon Show.
Brad?
That the Missouri marijuana industry generates $4 million a day in sales. John, that's what it's all about. Push away all the other BS. It's about making money. It's about making bucks. Collecting Benjamins. That's what it's about. And think about that.
Yeah, well, now Mullins did point out, let's not forget, or maybe I can't say didn't forget. If you listen to the clip, Mullins talks about how much money this has brought in for veterans. And Brad, the number escapes me off the top of my head, but I got to say the number is pretty impressive.
John, you know what? It bothers me when you hear, I know, do you know this guy? Do you know Mr. Mullins?
I don't know. I've never met him, no.
Okay, I know he's doing his job. It's just like when I had a little semi-skirmish at the St. Charles County council meeting years ago with, who's the two dudes, Kelly and Hancock, and which is the Republican? Is it John Hancock, the Republican?
Yeah, that's John Hancock, and it was about Better Together. Brad, we're running kind of low on time. What was your other point about Mullins' point here, Brad?
Well, it was did I say $4 million a month? I said I should have said $4 million a day. That's
what you said a day. Now, are you making that number up or is that real?
No, he said that. He said that in the interview yesterday.
Oh, he said that yesterday. Okay, yeah. I missed that point.
He said $4 million a day. That's what the Missouri.
That's revenue. That's not necessarily what is going to, like, the veterans don't get $4 million a day. That's probably total sales,
I understand,
right?
But think about it for a minute. A business that didn't exist 3 years ago now is generating $4 million a day in Missouri. Okay?
Well, it did exist, but you had to go up to Magic Market at the corner of Trinity and Bell Fountain and get a dime bag from Tyrone.
Right, you had to get that ditchweed. Okay, normally when John touches on one of my top three, I divert, but not this morning. So that'll be part of my top three this morning.
Okay. I like that, Brad. Hey, let's get into story number one.
The number one.
A headline. We'll start with Jason Rosenbaum of St. Louis Public Media. St. Louis County Executive Sam Page won't seek re-election. Brad, you and I had a brief text exchange yesterday about this. I wanted to make sure that you saw this news. Brad, this is a topic that you and I have discussed many times on the show. And if folks go to johncombest.com today, I don't know, Brad, some might say I'm taking a little victory lap because back in August of 2025, we talked about this topic on the show. And Sam Page was still running for re-election and he was going to stand up and fight, continue fighting for the people of St. Louis County. And I said, of course, that Sam Page would not run for re-election. And you disagreed. You made an Alfred E. Newman metaphor and said that he was like Alfred E. Newman. What me worry? And I said, no, he's definitely going to leave. And then in October, we had the same conversation. And I said, he's definitely going to leave. He will lose to Brian Williams if he were to run in a primary. And that the Sam Page team will be out trying to recruit some patsy to take the loss against Democrat Senator Brian Williams, who will be our next county executive here in St. Louis County. Jason does a good job in this piece of looking at the broad picture, talking about Brian Williams, the inevitability, some would say, of Brian Williams. Jason explores whether or not Sam Page's team will be able to find a patsy to lose against Brian Williams. And then Jason also goes into a little bit deeper detail that we won't go into about St. Louis County councils and the politics there. Sam has lost all but one of his proxy votes, people that are just reliable votes for anything that he wants. So the council is not favorable to Sam, which is certainly one of the other reasons why he is departing. So Sam Page, Brad, departing as St. Louis County executive after a whole lot of controversy over the years.
I said that all along, John. I mean,
and I would love for people, by the way, I think we've discussed it many times on the show, but folks can go back and they can take a look at my website today. And Brad, I have your and my discussion quite documented on our website. Now, Brad, I want to make a holiday analogy here. Do we have time for me to make a holiday analogy?
Oh, yeah, we got all hour. Go ahead, John. Do what you want. I mean, I'm the malevolent. Yeah, malevolent. You know, you're the smart guy. I'm the dumb guy. I try to use those big words.
Well, malevolent would be how you are as a dictator.
That's what I'm saying. I'm the malevolent dictator because I got control.
I don't want to be one of those old guys that just repeats himself because I spend 5 hours a week with one of those guys. But I will point out that Sam Page has, I think, what we could assume to be plenty of wealth. He has a beautiful wife who kept herself in good shape. He has, as I understand, as he's alluded to publicly, he has a bit of property. Sam is going to ride off into the sunset after this court case, which I believe he has a court date today down in Greene County. After this court case, he will get a slap on the wrist. A jury and or a judge will wag their finger and say, "You St. Louis politicians, don't you do this again." And Sam will say, "Okay." Well, a Sam voice will be like, "Okay, we won't do it again." And Sam will ride off into the sunset, and he will have a beautiful closing chapter of his life. And he will be done with St. Louis County politics, and he deserves it. He's saved his money. He is ready to move on, I'm guessing. And he doesn't need, as we talked about previously, Brad, the headaches, the hassles, and the horse hockey of county politics. Now, here's a tip for people going into the holiday season, and it has to do with Sam Page. If you look at Sam's statement here that Jason quotes in his piece, and by the way, we know Sam Page didn't write this statement. Sam didn't sit down on one of his hardworking days at the hospital and open up Microsoft Word and think,
What's my hook going to be for this passage?
So someone on Sam's team wrote this for him. But the statement is, public service means solving real problems, not manufacturing fake ones for clicks and sound bites. So I've made a decision that I believe takes courage. I'm not running for re-election to a third term. So, Brad, this is Sam being very high-minded. And Sam says, quote, whoever wrote this for Sam wrote, too many leaders have forgotten that courage means standing up for what's right, not what brings them headlines or takes someone else down. Now, I bring this up in terms of holiday season, Brad, because whoever wrote this for Sam is using one of my favorite linguistic and logical tricks, which is turning necessity into virtue. And Brad, you and I have gone back and forth on this, and we're not going to talk about you, and I'm not going to undermine you or allege that you're like this at all. But when folks go to a holiday gathering, keep your eyes open for people who turn necessity into virtue. That's what Sam's communications person is doing here. That's what Uncle Fred does, who's in his 60s or 70s and he's still working. And you asked Fred, hey, Fred, aren't you getting close to retirement? And Uncle Fred says, I'm not going to retire. People who retire are lazy. I'm not one of those people. Yeah, I'm not going to move to Florida and retire. Those people suck. You know that I was listening to Brad Hildebrand, and Brad said that retirement is the leading cause of death. What Fred doesn't mention is that Fred wasn't good with his money. Maybe Fred had some financial missteps. Fred is working because Fred has to work. Fred is trying to take his necessity, which is that he has to work into his 70s, and he's trying to turn it into a virtue. I'm not one of those people that retires. I'm hardworking. Well, whoever wrote this for Sam is taking Sam's necessity. He's about to get stomped in a primary election by Brian Williams, and somehow turning it into a virtue. Oh, I'm not one of those people. I don't forget that courage means standing up for what's right. So I'm going to take the high road. Now, again, we can't hold Sam accountable for this statement because he didn't write it. I'm sure he scanned it real quick on email on his phone and then just approved it and doesn't care. But whoever wrote this, Brad, is turning necessity into virtue. And when you go to your holiday events and Uncle Fred says, I'm working because I want to, you smile and you nod and you say, oh, Fred, you're so virtuous. Just smile and nod, Brad, but we know better.
John, do you know, I'll tell you about something about me you don't know. Do you know I'm actually a very well-accomplished magician? Did you know this about me?
Oh, what can you make disappear? Money?
Well, because of the fact that I'm actually doing a Christmas party tonight. And matter of fact, I'm doing it for a bunch of politicians. You don't know about this, do you?
No, I don't. Tell me about it, Brad.
And one of my favorite tricks is I say, here in my right hand, I have necessity, and now I'm going to turn it into virtue. And people go, oh, my God, yes!
Yeah. And they say, oh, look, we saw a Sam Page statement that does that exact same thing.
Okay, we have to move along. It's, matter of fact, the top three, I think, set the record for the longest top three this morning.
Thank you, Brad. I think it's important. I know that it's going to cut into the time where you talk about the runway at Lambert Airport, but I think our listeners can handle it.